In this podcast episode, David Epstein delves into the psychology behind overwhelm, creativity, decision making, and how constraints paradoxically foster innovation. Through a wide ranging conversation, he explores why humans often feel burdened by choice, how limiting options can enhance creativity and learning, and the importance of rituals and focused work in navigating complexity. The discussion touches on topics such as the green eggs and ham effect, maximizing versus satisficing, the replication crisis in science, multitasking, and examples of effective constraint-driven innovation in art, technology, and personal habits. David Epstein opens with the concept known as the green eggs and ham effect, named after Dr. Seuss's famous book written under restrictive vocabulary constraints. This effect highlights a key psychological finding. Removing the easiest default solution forces creativity by pushing the brain away from habitual, low-effort thinking. Due to our brain's tendency to conserve energy by gravitating toward familiar patterns, the path of least resistance, true creativity often requires that the easiest options be blocked. Epstein recounts how Dr. Seuss's limitations on vocabulary led him to experiment with rhythm and phrasing, producing a fresh literary style. This illustrates how imposing constraints can spark novel solutions by compelling people to explore alternatives more thoroughly than they would under unconstrained freedom. The conversation expands on why constraints, despite feeling restrictive, are vital for innovation. Epstein explains that while freedom and choice feel desirable in the abstract, evolution has wired humans to seek abundance because scarcity historically posed greater survival risks. This evolutionary backdrop leads to us overvaluing choice, even though excessive options can overwhelm and reduce satisfaction. Epstein cites psychological research debunking the myth that maximum freedom yields maximum creativity, showing that often, deliberate limitations foster deeper exploration and better outcomes. The idea of paired constraints from creativity research involves first blocking familiar approaches and then promoting a new specific element, as exemplified by Claude Monet's banishment of black paint, which gave birth to Impressionism. Creativity involves trial, error, and resilience, as even the most innovative breakthroughs come after many failures. Epstein discusses Barry Schwartz's influential research, revealing that people who try to optimize every decision, maximizers, often experience more regret and less satisfaction than satisficers, who settle for options that are good enough. The psychological burden of endlessly comparing and second-guessing depletes happiness and decision quality. He points out that in modern life, with its explosion of consumer choices, people paradoxically feel more bored and less fulfilled, even as options multiply dramatically beyond historical norms. Epstein describes experiments where people who had only one entertainment option reported less boredom and greater satisfaction than those given many options. The inability of humans to handle overwhelming choice leads to suboptimal decisions, paralysis, and anxiety. He emphasizes that irreversible decisions often yield higher happiness because commitment removes the torment of still available alternatives and potential regret. The episode shifts to explore the limits of human learning and scientific research, highlighting the replication crisis where many published findings fail to hold up under scrutiny. Epstein reveals that poor scientific practices like hypothesizing after results are known undermine truth discovery. Instead of making clear predictions and testing them, researchers often sift data until something statistically significant appears, a flawed method akin to firing randomly and drawing a target afterward. Training businesses and researchers in hypothesis-driven testing improves learning and adaptability, as they are forced to confront when their theories are wrong and pivot accordingly. Epstein shares the cautionary tale of Brian Wansink, an influential nutrition researcher whose work was unraveled due to questionable research practices, epitomizing the challenges in nutrition science. The takeaway is that learning requires deliberate constraints on data interpretation and rigorous prediction testing to minimize false positives. David Epstein also addresses the ways modern work and lifestyle patterns erode cognitive focus. Psychological research shows genuine multitasking of cognitively demanding tasks is a myth. What happens instead is rapid task switching, which carries cognitive costs. With distractions and interruptions increasing, people now switch tasks on average every 45 seconds, leading to reduced productivity and raised stress levels measurable in physiological markers like heart rate variability. Epstein highlights the counterintuitive phenomenon that even when people attempt to focus, their brains self-interrupt to maintain previous distraction rhythms. He recommends structured work blocks without interruptions and the use of external tools like writing down intrusive thoughts to minimize cognitive load. Epstein also advocates for routines like Hemingway's practice of stopping writing mid-sentence to provide momentum the next day, illustrating how ritual and preparation optimize performance. Epstein explores how well-calibrated constraints improve design outcomes and innovation across domains, from children's literature to military gear and sports. For example, the redesign of body armor tailored for women led to improvements benefiting all soldiers, demonstrating universal design's power by solving maximum constraints and thus aiding broader user groups. He recounts the failure of General Magic, a visionary tech company that collapsed under unlimited freedom, lacking the necessary focus to prioritize what not to do, contrasting with later innovations born from lessons about constraint. The constraints-led approach in sports training and artistic creation encourages deeper exploration of limited options, often producing superior results. In creative work, Epstein explains, too many constraints stifle ingenuity, while too much freedom leads to paralysis. The key is striking a balance that permits exploration while guiding focus. When it comes to personal choices and life management, Epstein stresses the importance of satisficing to avoid the overwhelm of maximal optimization. He shares examples such as limiting the criteria to a 6.5 out of 10 quality threshold before shipping a newsletter, a practical rule to beat paralysis by analysis. Drawing on principles from figures like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, focusing decisions through a single unifying goal helps prevent scattered priorities and increases clarity. Epstein also reflects on the psychological challenge of preserving optionality versus committing decisively, noting that keeping options open as an end in itself often leads to worse personal or professional outcomes. Rigidity in resolving to be in or out prevents negative consequences, such as ongoing relational dissatisfaction or career stagnation, and aligns with psychological findings favoring decisiveness. Epstein tackles the misconception that true creativity is about sudden, original bursts of invention. Instead, he explains that creativity historically and presently often involves reinterpreting and recombining existing ideas in novel ways. He references Shakespeare's adaptations and Edison's pragmatic innovations as examples. Moreover, originality that doesn't connect to shared understanding tends to be less impactful. This echoes in the contemporary debate around AI-generated art and music, which some oppose for bypassing years of human skill building, yet fundamentally works by remixing existing cultural artifacts, a form of undetected plagiarism. Epstein suggests this is a natural part of the creative process and questions how much human involvement matters to audiences. The discussion returns to how structure and ritual underpin sustained creativity and productivity. Epstein shares the example of renowned fiction writer Isabel Allende, who ritualizes her creative process with devoted time blocks, dedicated workspaces, and specific start and end day routines. These rituals signal a mental transition into focused work, akin to athletes' pre-shot routines. Such practices help maintain discipline and focus over decades. Epstein also remarks on the downsides of losing such structure, where limitless freedom can become overwhelming and paralyzing even for highly productive individuals. Rituals provide psychological scaffolding that combats distraction and anchors intention. Towards the end, Epstein revisits the meaning of the road less traveled, revealing Robert Frost's poem as a critique of overthinking choices rather than a celebration of rugged individualism. The poem highlights how worry about alternate options fosters hesitation and regret. Epstein reflects on Shakespeare's Hamlet to explain that human consciousness, our ability to vividly simulate possible futures, can be both a gift and a source of paralysis. This ability to imagine consequences means courage is not simply about overcoming fear, but about negotiating complex internal simulations of what might go wrong. This nuanced understanding reframes hesitation as an inevitable cost of our reflective minds. Epstein observes a cultural pushback against intense self-optimization as people grow fatigued by endless performance tracking, discipline, and restriction. While acknowledging some benefits of routines and plans, he notes that the era of maximization is facing a reckoning amid global uncertainties and technological change. Simplicity, intentionality, and prioritization of singular meaningful goals are emerging as antidotes to overwhelm. He suggests that periodizing goals and separating different objectives over time enhances achievement and reduces internal conflict, a practice supported by sports science. Ultimately, success lies in balancing constraints with freedom, experimentation with discipline, and focus with rest.